Okay, welcome to our workshop tonight for our public safety building project. We'll go ahead and call the workshop to order, and I'm going to move real quick so you can hear me. I am standing up. Okay, first thing we'd like to do is open the program with invocation. If you'd please stand. After the invocation, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is right here behind me. Okay, let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to gather here tonight as a community to look and view and learn about this upcoming project for our fire and police departments. I thank you for allowing us to live in a country that allows us to gather like this without fear of going to prison or worse. We thank you for being our Lord, our God, our Creator, and I ask that you please forgive us of our sins. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. A few announcements real quick before we get started and some information for you. First of all, I'm going to introduce council, and then I'll introduce our speakers. Starting with Rexana on the end, Rexana Lawman. Andy Thompson, Ward 1, and Rexana is with, I have to look because I forget, Rexana is with Ward 3. Ward 1 was Andy Thompson. Ward 2 is Paul Mears. Ward 4 is Francis Hildebrand. And Ward 5 is Keith Ogle. Also seated up here with us is our town manager, Seth Eckerd. Down front we have our finance director, Bo Weichel. We also have Jessica Lale, who is our clerk and our HR person. The speakers for tonight, and RJ, you don't have to stand up since you're kind of handicapped there. Our first speaker tonight will be Marty Beal. Marty is with CBSA Architects of Hickory. They've been in business, and I learned this today when I looked this up, Marty. It's pretty interesting. Been in business since 1934. They have a history of working with industry, commercial, healthcare, religious, and government projects. Our next speaker is R.J. Mosley. He's the Senior Project Manager and Finance Service Manager for McGill and Associates. They too are also out of Hickory, and they have offices in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. I also want to thank our Rock School staff for setting up all this and for taking care of the sound. Housekeeping. Your restrooms on my right and your left is out these doors, and they're located right here behind this exit to the right. The other restrooms are down that way, downstairs. Keep going right and you'll run right into them on the bottom floor. Your exits are located in the back and in the corners, so please make note of where the exits are. Okay, tonight's workshop, we'll take no action as a council tonight. This is just for all of us to learn more about this project. It's being recorded, so it'll also be on social media. I believe YouTube, is that correct, Seth? It'll be on YouTube probably tomorrow. Okay, I will ask if you'll please cut your cell phones off, and we be respectful for the presenters. I also encourage you to reflect on the information that's presented tonight. Share your thoughts with your elected representative in the following days. I assure you that none of these folks up here mind if you call them, and you can call me if you wish. But I urge you to consult if you have questions with your elected officials. And if I don't know an answer, and same with them, we'll direct you to staff. because nobody knows more about the building than our fire and police personnel. Once the presentation is finished, I ask that you hold your questions and comments until after the presentation. Once the presentation is completed, and that's going to last about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. That's the length of the presentation. Once it's completed, then we'll take a short break, 15-minute break, come back, and you folks can ask your questions that you have or make your comments that you may have. In doing so, there's a sign-up sheet down front, and some folks have already signed up. If you want to speak, you decide you want to speak or ask a question after the presentation has been presented, please sign the sheet during the break, and then once we come back from break, we'll start with the question and answer section. I ask that you stay on topic tonight. We're here to learn and discuss and talk about the public safety building. So if you have a question about other town services, in the days to come, call your representative or call someone with the town that handles that particular question or topic that you have the question about. So tonight we're strictly going to concentrate on the public safety building. During the question and answer section, you're encouraged to ask questions or share any thoughts that you may have. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, you'll simply come down here to the podium. That way everybody in the audience can hear the question. And once you come to the podium, state your name and address. Everyone will be given 5 minutes to ask a question or state their opinion. Some folks may have more than one question, and you'll be more than happy to let you come back another 5 minutes and ask a different question. The reason we're limited to 5 minutes is to make sure everybody gets their turn. And we'll stay here as long as anybody has a question. We understand that. We'll stay here as long as you need us to. Also, is David Sweesey out there somewhere? I'm sorry, I didn't have my glasses on. Yeah, you don't have your hat on today either. David, they're going to have a short meeting or a meeting after the question and answer section. Anyone who wants to stay for that is more than welcome. Is that what you need me to say, David? Is that all right? Okay. So after the question and answer section, some of the citizens will be meeting after that. If you want to join them, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have you. Okay, as I said, the presentation's estimated to last 1 hour. I encourage you to stay for the whole process. If you're here to learn, you certainly need to stay for the whole program. Okay, that's all I have. Did everyone get them a packet and an agenda for the meeting? Those were out front, I believe. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the presentations. And Marty Beal is our first presenter.
Good evening. My name is Marty Beal. I'm an architect with CBSA Architects out of Hickory. We are going to begin this presentation based upon the following outlines. This is how I've broken down the presentation. We'll be talking about several different aspects of the existing building. One, building repairs and accessibility upgrades. Section number 2 will be talking about general building renovations. Section 3 will be talking about the logistics that we think are going to be involved to accommodate the renovations. The next section will be talking about operation requirements, some things, deficiencies that we have found that are present within the existing facility. And in comparison, talking about how we compare the existing facility with the proposed new design that we have. And then follow up with an opinion of probable cost, both for the renovation of the existing facility and also the cost for new construction of a new facility. To begin with, we have, when I say we, our team, myself as an architect, RJ with McGill on the civil engineering side, our structural engineer, James Tate with Taylor and Viola Structural Engineers out of Hickory. We have looked at the existing facility, and there are a certain degree of repairs that need to be made to the building. We're going to have to look at examples of these, but just as a list, we're going to talk about wall cracks, cracks in the load-bearing exterior walls. These are both horizontal cracks, vertical cracks, and explain what we think, in our opinion, is going on and causing the cracks and potential ways that we can make the repairs. A portion of the parapet, and just to give you, if you're not familiar with the term, the parapet is the wall, the exterior wall that extends above the roof. If this is the roof and the wall extends above, from here up is called the parapet wall. There's a portion of the building that are showing signs of damage that the parapet, it needs to be replaced. We'll be talking about the condition of some exterior doors on the exterior that have rusted and corroded and becoming a problem. And because of these building repairs, it triggers some other things that have to occur with the police. There's some required police upgrades. We'll talk about that. The building currently houses firemen, and firemen live, work 24 hours a day. And because of that, they sleep in this station. And current day building code requires, because of the sleeping arrangement, that the building be protected with a fire sprinkler system. The building is not sprinkled. We'll talk about that. We have some issues with the floor drainage within the apparatus. And when I say apparatus bay, I'm referring to the fire truck bays where the fire engines are stored. There's issues with the drainage, where the drainage flows to rather than to the proper sanitary sewer system. There is evidence of water leaks, and when I refer to water leaks, I'm not talking about, even though there are signs of leaks in the roof, that we have major issues. There's been events where water is getting underneath the floor slab and coming up into the building from between the floor and the exterior walls. Accessibility is an issue. We're dealing with buildings that were built from 1926, 1975, 1978. None of these buildings are current day compliant with the American with Disability Acts. They're not compliant with the North Carolina Accessibility Code. Some of those items include toilet facilities. None of the toilets are accessible. The entrance and exit of the old town hall building, the north building, are not accessible. The showers in the fire station are not accessible, and it's a two-story public building without elevator access. So these are items that we're talking about as building repairs and accessibility. Here again, we're looking at a front view. You see the old town hall built in and around 1975. The two-story portion of the fire station built in around 1926, and the fire and police portion on the south side constructed in 1978. This is a floor plan of the first floor of the existing building. What you see in blue indicates police occupancy. What you see, and I'm going to refer to it as red, indicates fire occupancy. Items that are shown in green are areas that are shared by both fire and police together. Areas that are shown in white are currently unoccupied. This plan represents an inventory of wall cracks in the exterior wall. Anywhere that you see an oblong bubble that is perpendicular to the exterior wall, that indicates a vertical crack. Anywhere that you see a bubble that is running parallel with the exterior wall, that indicates a horizontal crack. And these are cracks that we are seeing on the interior of the building. We'll take a look at the exterior of the building in just a few minutes. We're seeing vertical cracks that are ranging in width of approximately 1/16 up to 3/16 of an inch, which is indicated on the left slide. On the right of the slide, we're seeing breakage where cracks have already occurred in the brick that are exceeding a 1/2 inch. These are isolated locations. It's not typical. We're seeing evidence on the interior of a horizontal crack. This is on the police side, but what you can see is a blow up on the right. And this is part of evidence that we're seeing on the exterior. You're going to see wire sticking out of the wall right here. This is part of the steel wire tie that is laid in the mortar joint as the wall is being built. And these wall ties are laid at 16 inches on center all the way up the wall. What happens is moisture gets into the wall, and over time, these wires are not protected. This is very common for buildings that were built in the 1970s era. They're not galvanized. There is no protection against rust and corrosion. So what we're seeing is moisture in the wall is causing the wires to corrode and rust. And on the exterior side of this exterior wall, you're seeing freezing and thawing action. As moisture gets into the wall, anything on the outside of the insulation tends to freeze. Well, when water freezes, things expand. So over time in that cycle, we're seeing that freeze and thaw is popping the mortar, and also the rust is expanding and causing the mortar to pop. So this is what you're seeing, that the mortar joint is starting to pop out of the wall. And there's really one location that's common, about 8 feet high on the interior of the building, but when we get to the exterior, you're going to see that pattern that repeats itself at every 16 inches on center. Here again, some other views of vertical cracks that are in the wall. Here again on the interior facade. These are where masonry walls, interior masonry walls, are abutting the exterior wall. This is in the police department where the walls of the armory are abutting the south exterior wall. The walls are on the exterior due to some of the joints failing. They're starting to deform out of plane, so you're getting kind of a serpentine shape. And you can see that as the walls are pulling apart from the interior partitions. You can see that the ceilings are separating from the exterior wall. Interior partitions are separating from the exterior wall due to that deformation. This is a view of the south wall of the police department. You can see a faint image of horizontal lines at about every 16 inches on center. This dates back to approximately 2008. It appears that all these joints have been repaired. So this problem of call it joint spalling, where the mortar joint is popping out of the wall, has a history with the building. At this time, in 2008, the joints were ground out to a certain depth, and then mortar was placed back in the joint and tuck pointed in place. And that was the extent of the work. There was nothing else done. And it occurred from this outside corner all the way down the wall to the next outside corner. So from the southwest to the southeast corner of the south wall. Here again, you can see the pattern we're talking about with every 16 inches where the joints have been replaced. This is photograph off the east wall of the police, and you can see this is beginning to occur, which is what the south wall has been partially repaired. The joints are spalling. The blow up is on the right. You can see the mortar is absent. It's exposing the wire reinforcement within the joint, and it's occurring at that same 16-inch pattern. Also on the east side, this is the rear entrance into the fire administrative area. There's an awning, and a blow up on the right here shows the anchor point for the brace. And you can see that the brick has broken and spalling away. Cracks are developing. This is becoming a point of caution because any kind of significant load, such as a heavy snow load, will continue to put pressure on the awning and possibly cause failure. This is the north wall of the old town hall building. Here again, we can see the joint pattern at every 16 inches, which is showing where the joints are spalling due to the rust and corrosion of the joint reinforcing. The slide on the right is the interior side of this same exterior wall. And you can see that at this point right here, there is a very significant horizontal crack. And what it appears, there's been some thermal expansion and contraction, possibly in the roof structure, which has caused this wall to crack. And it's a little bit out of plane, the crack causing the wall to, this is exaggerated, but deform in this figure. This is on the east wall. We talked a little bit a while ago about the parapet condition. Along the east wall, there is a continuous crack, which is indicated by this yellow line. And at this elevation, this is a diagram drawing of the wall detail off the original drawings. The roof bearing, which the bar joist of the roof structure bears on this wall. And the bearing point is at about that elevation above the finished floor. The parapet wall, which is from this point up, the crack is appearing to be located at that joint, which is causing the parapet to become unattached to the bearing wall below. Now, I need you to understand that even though we're experiencing wall cracking, the load of the roof is putting a force down on the wall that the pressure is helping hold the wall together. Once we get above that load-bearing point, we have nothing to hold the parapet down. So the more this joint deteriorates and this parapet becomes loose, then lateral forces such as a heavy wind could be enough to tilt the wall over. So part of our proposal in this evaluation is that we remove and replace this portion of the parapet, which occurs along the east side of the South 1978 building. Here again, there's a detail. This is the load-bearing condition where the crack's occurring. This is the detail showing the south wall where the wall is parallel to the roof structure. We're not seeing that same crack at that location. Here's a diagram kind of showing a summary of what we're talking about with load-bearing condition. We've got the parapet 2 feet high. Then we have our wall ties that occurred every 16 inches in the wall. They're corroding. The joints are popping off at that 16-inch pattern. And when that happens, please understand the wall is constructed of a 4-inch interior width of brick, a 2-inch cavity which is filled with insulation, and a 4-inch exterior width of brick. So it makes a total wall thickness to be 10 inches wide. Now, we can look at how the bar joist bears at this point. By putting in this wall reinforcing, it takes the two 4-inch walls and combines it as one 10-inch wall to give you a 10-inch load-bearing wall. Just imagine this is the interior, this is the exterior, and you have the wire reinforcing that holds it together. Well, when that wire corrodes and breaks in two, There's nothing to hold this and make it a composite wall. So the load-bearing condition changes from a 10-inch wall to a 4-inch wall, which is what you see now. This 4-inch width of masonry becomes the load-bearing component rather than a 10-inch wall. So our structural engineer has taken a look at it, and in his opinion is stating that the load-bearing condition of this deteriorated wall due to the wire reinforcing breaking apart, the wall right now is at 15% of its bearing capacity of what it was designed for. Here is the existing drawing of the existing building, and we have imposed the pattern of repair. One being you're going to see a series of dots. Then you also see a series of straight red horizontal lines. The red horizontal lines indicate that where we would grind out the existing deteriorating joints, replace back with mortar, and tuck point it back into place. And that is what was done on the south wall here in 2008. There's one more step that would go into repairing the wall, and what it is called, we're going to refer to it as stitching the wall back together. This is a drill. This is called a Helifix wall anchor, and it is this item by the drill is screwed in to the wall from the exterior. It's screwed in through the exterior face, through the mortar joint, through the cavity, into the inner width of the brick. This needs to be installed at 16 inches on center, horizontal, 16 inches on center, vertical. So you'll be getting, this is the resemblance of the pattern that would occur basically on all four sides of the building. We're estimating there's approximately 2,800 stitches that would be required to stitch the wall back together. There's approximately 3,500 linear feet of mortar joint that would need to be ground out and tuck pointed back into place. We talked about corrosion of door frames. There's 3 hollow metal door frames assemblies that were all part of the 1978 project with both new construction and then renovation. Door assembly here, 2 door assemblies in the back. And when I talk about a door assembly, I'm referring to the hollow metal door frame as well as the hollow metal door. There's evidence that you can see that the faces of the doors are beginning to rust and corrode, also along the seal at the ground. But in some of these locations, it appears that the anchor that connects the frame into the masonry wall here again has corroded and broken apart because the frame assembly is not secured within the wall. You can actually with your hands take it and shake it. We talked about sleeping in the fire station. Right now, the building is unsprinkled. We're providing some cost estimates for providing a full building coverage system, which includes a riser and the riser controls, the backflow preventer and a hot box on the exterior, along with fire water service, a complete fire alarm system, and also the monitoring for it. Now, a little background. Currently in the police department, some of the areas within the police department are grandfathered in by CALEA. And what CALEA stands for, it's the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agency. It's the governing body of the police department. And right now, the armory, the evidence collection room, evidence storage room, and the IT space are in violation of CALEA standards. Currently in the IT storage, both police and fire are sharing the same IT space, and that needs to be separated because of security issues. Police needs to have their own standalone IT space, and the fire needs to have a separate IT space. But more importantly, when any work is done on this building, according to what CALEA is telling the police department, they have to upgrade these spaces. And the upgrade for the armory and the evidence storage, right now, the partitions that surround the rooms extend up and just above the ceiling. They need to be isolated spaces, which means the partitions need to extend all the way to the roof deck and be sealed to the deck for multiple purposes, but one is so someone can't crawl above the ceiling and get down into these rooms. Each of these two spaces need to have their own separate heating and air conditioning system. So in order for that work to happen, ceilings would have to be removed both within the space and a certain area beyond, so work can occur on both sides of the wall to put the mechanical system, the duct work, the electrical work, and extend the walls up to the metal roof deck. So for that work to occur and the building to remain occupied during this work, it would create some distraction. Talk a little bit now about the floor drainage systems within the fire truck bays. Currently, you're going to see the area in the dash green is the existing sanitary sewer that runs under the floor. We have sewer that's running from south to north, from north to south, collecting in the Bay Area and running out the west side of the building into the public sanitary sewer system. Existing condition now within the fire truck bays, there are no floor drains for the vehicles in the northern bay. There's a floor drain back in the storage area. But in the southern bay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 floor drains. Currently, these floor drains collect and flow out the east side of the building and flow into the storm drainage system. They spill out to daylight somewhere across the railroad tracks from Town Hall. Now, this is an environmental issue that I've explained to you because current day is the building code now requires that floor drains, especially in a space with vehicles, the floor drainage must flow through a sand oil interceptor before it is connected and drains into the sanitary sewer system. So what exists now is an environmental issue. It's also a violation of some of the town's zoning ordinance and their stormwater protection policies. One solution to correct it is we would have to, one, divert that floor drainage to the east. Well, in order to make that happen, we have to dig up the concrete slab. We have to reverse the flow from the floor drain to the outflow going to the west rather than to the east. Since there is no floor drainage within these bays, we can add those floor drains, redirect the floor drains out of the south bay, collect everything into the sand oil interceptor on the exterior of the building, then flow into the sanitary sewer. We talk about that there has been some events with water leaks. This is occurring, the water leaks are occurring in this area, which is near the IT space in the police department in the southeast corner of the building. Photographs here, we're looking down the wall, this is the floor, and you're seeing this gap between the floor slab and the exterior wall. This is another view looking This is the exterior wall and the floor slab in that same gap. During a heavy rain event, there's been evidence of water that is not running down the wall, but actually running up through this void and flooding out this portion of the police department. The thought is that that may be some issue with the roof drainage. So what you can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 roof drains on the roof. Currently, these pipes dump into the wall, and the riser is within the 10-inch wall and flows down before it exits the building below grade. The thought is that somewhere in here there is a broken pipe, a loose joint or something that when heavy rains occur, it is spilling out of the pipe and coming up. The force is pushing it up through the wall. There's been evidence that a measuring tape was placed, and the subgrade below this finished floor, typically, which would be 4 inches of slab, 4 inches of stone, you'd hit subgrade about 8 inches. That subgrade has been 12 plus inches below the top of below this finished floor elevation. So here again, with that amount of water, the thought is that the force of the water, as it's being pushed up and flowing out at some point we don't know where, is causing the subgrade to wash out. Some accessibility issues to make you aware of. On the old town hall, the north building, the front doors are not accessible simply because they're not wide enough. These are a pair of 30-inch wide doors. All accessibility codes require that you have 36-inch door to gain the maximum clearance. The rear exit door is a 36-inch door. However, you've got to have the proper clearance beyond of 12 inches or 18 inches, depending upon which side the swing is on. So this recess is creating the barrier for a handicapped person. All the other doors do appear to be fully accessible. The toilets within the Old Town Hall, the toilets within the police and fire department, the lobby toilets are all inaccessible according to today's code. On the second floor in the fire department, we have the restroom shower area, which is what you're seeing here. The shower is non-compliant with accessibility standards. The toilets are also non-compliant with accessibility standards. It's a 2-story public building. An elevator is probably more than likely going to be required, especially if federal funds are used to fund the project. So where would that elevator go? We don't know. We're just showing as a placeholder the possibility here. But with an elevator, you have to think about, we have the elevator machine, we have the operating machine that goes on the first floor, we have an elevator shaft, we have to have mechanical systems to heat and cool the elevator equipment room, we have plumbing required for the elevator pit, we have electrical work, so it is a very complicated task to add on to the elevator, not to mention how do you access from the elevator if it's on the outside of the building to get to the inside, or if the elevator is located on the inside of the building, where do you put it and how do you build it within a building? Now we move to our next phase of building renovations, and what we're going to be talking about, these are items that are beyond the need for repair. They're beyond the need of some of the issues that we've talked about of damage due to water penetration and infiltration. It's been identified that with a new renovated facility that the sign would need to be upgraded to move as progress a new facility with a new building sign. The police and fire department kitchen would need to be renovated. What you're seeing here is photographs out of the break area on the police department side. This is an example, one example of many functions being shared within one space that don't need to be shared within the same space. For example, this table is the table that folks sit on their break and they eat off of. This is the same table that when evidence is brought in, it's processed off this table and then placed in the storage. These are lockers that are within this same space where drugs are stored. This is the cabinet for the break area in the police. They don't have facilities. They don't have sink or the common facilities that it's needed for a sustainable break area. Just a couple other items listed. The heating air conditioning doesn't work over the old town hall, the north building. The systems work in the middle building and the south building, but the systems are old. There's a lot of maintenance that is required to keep things running, a lot of parts that are needing to be replaced. There's age on the system that some of the parts are becoming obsolete. Plumbing, we've talked about some of the plumbing issues, but here again, the plumbing is, some of the plumbing dates back to the 1920s, and it's old. The pipes are what might have been a 2-inch pipe in those days have been, the interior believed to have corroded down to where it's restricted the flow. There's a lot of plumbing issues and repairs that are ongoing within the facility. There's a need for the upgrading of the electrical system, both for power and lighting. There's an upgrade for the life safety equipment, being the exit signs and the emergency signs and egress lighting that's required. Currently, there is an emergency backup generator that is provided for the facility. However, it doesn't provide coverage for the entire facility. This is a 100 kW generator. We've looked into the extra capacity for this generator is not sufficient to pick up the remaining portion of the building, so a new generator, new transfer switch, and additional electrical work would be required in order to place the full facility on emergency power. This item is a very identifiable item for public safety facilities, whether it be EMS, police, fire, etc. It's classified in the building code as a Category 4 essential facility. Now, we've talked about up to this point of building repairs to repair the building. That does not get you to what we're listing here as a Category 4 essential facility. All repairing the building wall does is get you back to the state that the wall was designed for at the time that it was built in 1975, 1978, and 1926. It doesn't renovate the building into a Category 4 essential facility. So in order to do that, there's very evasive measures of renovation that has to occur. Some of those, to give you an example, is steel frames would need to be constructed either on the exterior of the building or on the interior of the building that connect the foundation, the wall, and the roof structure together to make the structure, I'll just call it stiffer, because what a level 4, Category 4 essential facility does is providing greater resistance to lateral wind loads, but in more so, it is providing resistance to seismic activity. At the time these buildings were built, there was no seismic activity provided for in our building codes. And you think about recent seismic activity, maybe 2-3 years ago, there was a series of small earthquake and tremors in the Tennessee mountains, North Carolina mountains. More recently, there was seismic activity in the Sparta area of Allegheny County. Just to give you a note, the building walls in the condition that they are in at this very moment, being unrepaired, if we were to see any kind of seismic event, I can't tell you what magnitude, but a seismic event is going to give you this kind of force against the wall. They're already in a broken state, and with this kind of force, those walls have no resistance to lateral movement. They're only designed to resist the vertical load that's being imposed upon them. So renovation to a Category 4 essential facility would require the steel bracing to be installed that stiffens the exterior walls to resist a certain amount of that lateral movement that can be imposed by seismic activity. That would include wall strapping. We talked about interior straps being bolted to tie the wall together. We're talking about steel tubes as large as 6-8 inches, steel tubes of both columns, horizontal bracing, and horizontal beams. Asbestos abatement. There are different levels of asbestos that are in the facility right now. Some asbestos could be, we think, is exposed in the old town hall part, which is basically the adhesive that was left from tile that had been removed in recent years. That kind of abatement work could be done very easily during repairs. There is evidence that on the second floor of the fire department, which is below where carpet is installed now, there is possibly vinyl asbestos tile as well as the asbestos adhesive, which is underneath. The interior finishes, which you can see examples of here, they've lived their life in a lot of instances. They've become, this is in a back stairwell to where this is kind of a sign of there's been some moisture that has gotten either coming up through the slab and it's popping the tile loose off the floor. Ceiling tiles that have begun to sag due to high humidity levels, and whether there's condensation dripping off the ductwork or roof leaks. You've got cracks in the floors and the tile. We've got cracks in the walls. Now, the walls can be repaired, but the cracks will still remain. So do we live with the visual appearance of these cracks, or fur the wall, let the exterior wall have a nice chipboard finish like the interior partitions? Moving back into the fire truck bays, the existing floor finish is in need of replacement. Currently in this apparatus or fire truck bay, the means of ventilation is to open the front doors and open the rear doors and hope the wind blows through. In a modern day facility, the building code requires at a minimum that a mechanical ventilation system be provided, along with a carbon monoxide detection system be provided. As an elective, a lot of fire stations are choosing to put in vehicle exhaust systems, where the vehicle exhaust, there's a connector to the exhaust pipe on the apparatus, and it is ventilated through a system and blown directly to the exterior. There are existing windows on the second floor of the fire station that are old. They're not energy efficient and need to be replaced. And some general office renovations for the administrative levels for the fire and police departments. Now we'll talk a little bit about the logistics that we've identified of how can we make this a building available for the renovations that we've talked about. We need to think about how to relocate during renovation, because some of these renovations are going to be very evasive, and it's just, I can't see how anyone can occupy the building while the type of work that will have to be done can be done. Here again we have the layout of the existing building, and I'm dividing this up into Phase A, Phase B, and Phase C. And this is just a possibility, not saying this is the way to work, but the north building, the Old Town Hall building right now, is unoccupied. and in a thought of trying to reduce the number of moves, and with each move there's going to be expense. The Old Town Hall could be renovated into a police facility. Now keep in mind, once this is renovated, police could move over and move one time. This would switch their home from here to here. They would gain very little additional space, if they would gain anything at all. It's just they would have a fresh new space within a safe environment, because this building could be renovated, repaired, and renovated as a Category 4 essential facility. Once this work is done, the police can move out from B to the A part. The fire admin would still remain here, but work could begin in this area to both repair the facility and renovate it as a Category 4 essential facility. Fire admin could then move into this renovated area, but when we get to this point, the rest of the fire would have to relocate in order for the renovation work to occur of what we're recommending. Where do they occur? Where do they relocate? We're not sure, but the possibility we're showing is that one option would be to construct a temporary facility to house the vehicles and equipment, while we could work a way to hold the fire admin and maybe firefighters in this location. Operational requirements. This is kind of a list of overview items of things that we're seeing that are not ideal circumstances within the existing facility. The 42-year-old and 95-year-old buildings are overcrowded and are not able to efficiently support safe fire and police operations. These problems compromise the ability for services to be delivered to the public in a safe, secure, and efficient manner. Many functions are required to share small and crowded spaces, such as what we saw an example of in the police break room. There is limited opportunity for internal training, community activities, and many other functions. Talking about training, the fire department has a training classroom up on the second floor, and currently can hold maybe up to 20 people comfortably. Beyond that, it's going to get tight and crowded. And they have on their full staff, including volunteers, approximately 30 plus people. So they're limited on how they have department-wide meetings. The police, on the other hand, they don't have a large meeting space. So typically when they have training activities, they're holding them in the community room at the town hall. The building in question is a combination of three structures like we talked about. Cracks are present in most exterior walls. Cracks seem to be worse in the 78 edition where the police are, and moving towards the fire department, but the entire structure is compromised. Instead of there being a single storage area, items are separated into several small storage areas. The SCBA compressor, which is the breathing air filling station. The turnout gear storage, which is where the equipment that the firefighters wear when they go out on a call. And the ice machine are located within the fire truck bays. The truck exhaust creates risk for contamination. Turnout gear storage within the fire truck bays. Truck exhaust creates hazardous contaminants. Lack of sufficient areas for storage support is forcing the diversion of some firefighting equipment, materials, and supplies to improvised locations, impairing operational efficiency. The fire and police departments do not have a fitness exercise areas. Employees must leave the station to travel to the gym. The public gym is not always open during times that firefighters can attend, and does not have after-hours access. There is very little hands-on training that can be completed at the existing building. The day room, this is on the fire department side, which is located on the second floor, is only big enough for 2 people, so when extra personnel are on duty, there is not enough room. This does not support efficient fire and police operations. The fire sleeping area, which is also on the second floor, is too far away from the bays and located on the second level. The existing facility has 1 large sleeping area, which is not ideal when you have a combination, which is present within the current Valdese Fire Department, combination of female and male employees. Only 1 bathroom and 1 shower are provided in the sleeping area, which is used by both male and female. Lockers are insufficient in number and in size. The administration offices are small and spread in the facility. 1 workstation for all the patrol officers is not very sufficient or efficient. Storage space, which is located in the different building. For example, the police are located in the south portion of the south building, but yet they have some archive storage space that is located in the northeast corner of that same building. So they have to go out of the police department through the fire department to gain access to their archive storage. Administrative support lacks space for conference room, interview rooms, supply storage, file cabinets, copy machine. Patrol functions lack needed grouping for operational efficiency. The existing police facility lacks report writing space. The existing police do not have a dedicated roll call room. Spaces are not large enough for all personnel involved in shift briefings. Police training is conducted off-site. Certain training needs are better conducted in-house. The police department lacks a locker room with sufficient space to accommodate officer uniforms, personal equipment, boots, and other needed items. The police department does not have an arrestee processing holding area. And we'll talk a little bit more about this because this can become a security risk. Absence of a sally port for prisoner transfer at the police facility brings with it a serious security risk. Evidence storage is overly congested and operationally inefficient due to the existing building space. Evidence storage with sensitive evidence items is accessed from the break room, and some evidence lockers are located within the break room due to the lack of space. Evidence storage and evidence-related areas lack pass-through lockers, bag and tag area, separation of the drug, valuable, weapon storage. Evidence storage has no logging system. Break room is too small and lacking in needed fixtures such as sinks, oven, dishwasher, microwave, refrigerator, ice maker, and sufficient vending machines. All these features are presently located in the kitchen on the fire department side. It is very inefficient in location for required access and in needed features. The entire fingerprint and photo area lacks secured separation from civilian use. Central location is needed for printer, copier, scanners, fax, and shredder. Storage areas are located outside of the building, and this restricts access on a daily basis. Each police department unit requires storage for different purposes. Among the needs are archival storage and equipment supply storage. Functionality of the records division is to work as a large open space with individual work areas. Administrative assistant serves 2 departments, both police and fire. Existing support areas currently in dire need additional space with no means for expansions in the present building configuration. Lobby is congested and operationally inefficient due to the existing building space availability and configuration. Rear of the police department is unsecure in the parking lot. Anyone can enter police parking lot in the rear of the department. Police employees must enter through traffic into the parking lot even though there are signs. Officers cannot see if anyone is outside the door before exiting the building. The rear door has no way of observing what or who is on the other side. No camera system is in place. No surveillance ability is provided. Police parking does not have a secured fence parking lot. Those are some observations that have been made of the existing facility. Now we're going to take a look at comparing the existing facility with the proposed new facility. This is a chart that this is identifying. These are the space needs area within the police and the fire and the shared areas of the building. This column is showing the area that is available within the existing facility. This column is identifying the area that was identified in a space needs study that addresses the 20-year need of both departments. And this column identifies the space needs that are provided within the proposed floor plan. The existing building is approximately 16,818 square feet. The 20-year need that was identified indicates needs of space in the range of 26,384 square feet. The proposed floor plan has been scaled back to help reduce the cost for approximately 24,500 square feet. So all that to say that the existing facility is showing a deficit in programmable operational space for police and fire of just over 30%. Now to compare the two facilities, on the left you have the existing facility, first floor and second floor, that totals 16,818 square feet. The proposed facility on the right, approximately 24,500 square feet, and there's a difference in floor area of 7,644 square feet. This is to show you examples of some things that we talked about in our observations. Gender separation. There are both male and female staff within the police and the fire department. Currently, top left photograph is the only locker room within the fire department, which is shared by male and female. The top right photo is the only restroom shower area in the fire department that is shared by male and female. The lower right corner is the only bunk room that has 4 beds that is shared by male and female firefighters. The lower left is showing the police have no locker rooms, so lockers are provided within the sergeant's offices. They're provided within other offices that have space available in order to store the lockers. Now, currently, it's my understanding in the fire department, there is one shift worker that would spend the night, and that the one bunk room is sufficient. But if ever, when the time comes that additional firefighters are provided on a shift that spends the night, then there is going to be an issue of male-female gender separation. In the new proposed facility, you can see in the blue we have separate male and female restroom facilities, shower facilities, and locker facilities. We have it for both the police in this area and the fire in this area. The fire department has bunk rooms that are separate sleeping rooms, so there is no dormitory type bunk room. It's separate rooms that would accommodate a mixture of male and female firefighters. Again, looking at the existing building, we want to take a look at the fire and police administrative area. Talk about some possible security and safety risk. Currently, there are 2 access points the front door and the rear door. Police would bring in an arrestee. Their goal is to bring them into this blue bubble area where for questioning in an interview room or processing and fingerprinting. But in order to get there, they have to enter in through the fire department in order to get into the police department. So let's take the scenario that if for whatever reason, once they enter the building, the arrestee overtakes the police officer and escapes. They have full access by the route of the solid red lines and arrows to get basically anywhere within the building, even over into the fire department side. So that's where you identify as a safety risk. In a new facility, we take a look at a safe and secure holding processing area. The arrestee is brought in police cruiser, parks within the sally port, which is double dutied as both for arrestee transport and also for large storage, like if vehicles are taken into custody, they're stored here, or otherwise large evidence that is brought in that can't be otherwise stored within the building can be stored here. You see these circles that are indicating controlled access points, electronic type doors that are operated by personnel only. They're not just free flowing. Anyone can walk up and open the door and walk in. As arrestees brought in, the doors are closed and secured. They're escorted into this, the processing area. Once they're here, they cannot get out without the escort of an officer due to the officer having the control of the door. Within this area, there's a holding area, an interview area. Now, also, this setup, and this here is not within the secured area, but this is a multi-purpose type room for a small conference that can serve as another holding, so that you understand if there's ever a need that you have a male, a female, and a juvenile who are brought in at the same time, by the standard, they need to be separated. They can't be held together. So there would be space available to hold a male, hold a female, and the juvenile could be held here so that you would have everything safe and compliant for holding and processing. But once into this area, they would be contained, and when time comes that they bond out, they have their own exit out, so no one that is brought in will gain access into the rest of the building. That's in through the secure entry area and out through the secure entry area. Take a look now at the fire truck bays and some of the health risks that go along with this situation. This, we talked about the SCBA, the breathing air fill station. That's here. It's located right here behind the fire truck. This is the ice machine that's located within the same room as the fire trucks. This is the turnout gear that's located right beside the fire truck. And when that fire truck cranks up or when it pulls in the station, it's giving off exhaust. The exhaust, remember, we have no ventilation system, so the exhaust is hanging out in the space. It's being absorbed by the turnout gear. If the engines are running while they're filling breathing tanks, there's the possibility of contaminating the breathing air, as well as contaminating the ice that's being packed into the coolers that goes onto the trucks that goes out into the field with the firefighters. Take a look at the apparatus space for the proposed new facility. This is arranged in a little bit different fashion than the existing. The existing building has 2 drive-through bays, 2 back-end bays, and they're separated by the wall, which was an existing building wall due to construction, how things were added over the years. But this bay is 4 open bays, so it gives you a large space that vehicles can be pulled out, and you can use it for interior training and activities. But more importantly, we have arranged bay storage areas that are immediately adjacent to the firefighting equipment. The turnout gear, which is located on the wall beside the fire engine, can now be located within its own isolated conditioned room with its own ventilation, its own washdown, and not have to share the same exhaust as the fire engines. The air-breathing tank fill station, same thing, can be located within its own isolated room protected from the fumes of the fire engines. The ice machines can be located in isolated space protected from the fire equipment. This is just showing a layout of how the vehicles are laid out in the existing building. The bays right now are approximately, in this part of the building, approximately 15 feet wide and 70 feet from front door to back door, which is very tight. It restricts what kind of maneuvering and access space you have with vehicles. It's very difficult to wash down trucks. They can store up to, there's 2 back end, these are 2 back end bays, storing now up to approximately 7 vehicles. Limited flexibility with the largest space that can be gained is a 70 by 30, approximately 2,100 square feet. There is no ventilation, so there's the possibility that you could retrofit vehicle exhaust and ventilation. However, due to limited height, ceiling heights, and limited width, it would be very limited. There may not be enough space to get all the equipment and ducts and rails and et cetera in to provide a vehicle exhaust system. I think you could very easily put in ventilation, but the exhaust system might be a challenge, but it is something that would be very needed. And in this layout, most of the storage is in this part of the building, which is kind of remote from the base and not immediately adjacent. In a new facility, it can store up to 8 vehicles, treating as 8 back ends or 4 drive-through bays. The bay sizes are approximately 20 by 80. You can get greater flexibility with an 80 by 80 space if you need it for whatever training purposes, 6,400 square feet as compared to 2,100. This would have adequate height in order to be equipped with vehicle exhaust and the proper ventilation. And as we talked about, the storage would be immediately adjacent to the bay. A new facility to provide enough clearance in the ceiling height that the vehicles could have, their cabs could be tilted to work on the inner engines, which cannot happen in the existing facility. Opinion of probable cost. This is looking at a full renovation of the existing facility, meaning we repair the exterior walls, we upgrade all the accessibility issues, and we do all the general renovation costs to bring the building up to the standards of a Category 4 essential facility. The estimated cost for a 16,818 square foot building is $6,484,199. This cost includes, like we talked about, the renovation construction cost, soft costs such as design fees, testing fees, survey fees, furnishings and equipment. It also includes, we talked about earlier, the cost of a temporary structure in order to relocate fire vehicles and fire equipment while the renovation work goes on. This money also includes a grant from the state of North Carolina that would be applied to the cost. This cost also includes the demolition, on a different project, but all these items are included with with this price tag. Looking at the proposed new building, 24,500 square feet for $7,048,050. Again, it includes all the building costs, site development costs, soft costs, which includes design fees, testing fees, surveys, etc., furnishings and equipment. It includes a grant, the same grant from the state of North Carolina. This cost also includes the demolition of the existing mill building that's located on Pine Bur. That concludes the presentation that we have prepared. I hope we have provided more information than confusion, but I'm sure some of you may have questions that we will be happy to answer.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Bo Weichel. I'm the finance director for the town, or as the planning department refers to me as the finance guy. So, whatever you prefer, it works. Some of you know me, but for those of you that don't, I joined the town of Valdese family at the end of 2018. Before that, I was an auditor with a private firm, and then I joined the city of Hickory for a number of years before coming to Valdese. So tonight we're just going to go over a 30,000-foot view, finances of the town, how things run, and then at the end we'll kind of compare the two options that Marty presented. So what we're going to go over this evening are regulations that the town is under as far as financial matters, the current debt situation for the town, an economic outlook, and finally the financing comparison of the two options. So how are the town finances regulated? Well, there's a number of regulations that we're under. The North Carolina General Statutes is the umbrella that kind of encompasses everything. Within that, there's something called the Local Budget and Fiscal Control Act, which is Section 159 of the General Statutes. That kind of guides and regulates what we can and can't do. On top of that, we're required to receive an annual audit every year. And there's also some various reporting requirements that we have to do throughout the fiscal year and send those reports to the state. Speaking of the state, we answer to the LGC, which stands for the Local Government Commission. So what that is a department of the State Treasurer's Office, and they are the authority of all local governments, whether that be a city or a county within North Carolina. So the auditors, when they do their annual audit, they send it to the LGC. And when we do our various reporting, we send it to LGC. And what they do is they have a staff that's constantly going through the numbers for every local government throughout the state, making sure that they're in good financial condition. And one key thing to keep in mind as we're talking about this public safety building and the options that are presented, the LGC, which we have to report to, they have to approve the debt for any unit of local government before we can obtain a loan. So not only do we have to go through the lender and get vetted through that, and they review our financials, but the LGC also has to approve any debt that the town council decides that they want to pursue. So on top of that, the town has to follow something called GAAP, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. So this kind of regulates how the town does our accounting. So under this GAAP, which is they're a national organization, they outline that all local governments must follow something called fund accounting. So what this is, it's different than the private sector. So for local government, under fund accounting, and for Valdese in particular, we operate under two different funds called the general fund and then the utility fund. So why are we talking about that? Why is that important here? Well, it's important because under the general fund, that deals with like general town services. So you've got fire and police, public works, recreation, planning. All those fall under the general fund. And then under the utility fund, we have the water and sewer utilities. And the importance of that is the revenues that come in from the utility fund, such as when you pay your water bill or sewer bill, those revenues cannot be used for items that fall under the general fund. And vice versa, the taxes that you pay for services such as recreation or fire and police, those taxes cannot be used to pay for something like utility fund debt. So putting a water line, sewer line under Main Street, those taxes cannot be paid to do that. It has to come from the water and sewer revenues. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this and as we get into the debt portion here in the next slide. So when we're comparing the debt that the town has, because this is a fire and police station, we're only going to look at the general fund debt because that's what provides those services. So under the general fund debt, this is the current situation that the town has. We have 6 items that are funded through debt with annual payments, various years remaining. But at the bottom here, our annual debt amount that we pay in the budget each year is $260,244. And this number changes slightly year by year because interest goes down as we pay these loans down. But for the current year, that's what the number is. And then below that, you'll see a percentage. And what that is the appropriations in the general fund budget. So the items that are appropriated to pay for expenses in debt, the $260,000, that is only accounted for 4.28% of the total appropriations in the general fund debt. So that's actually a really low number. So your town council's done a good job of maintaining and managing the debt for the town. So that's something to be proud of. Now, here's a little exercise we want to do. General fund debt, and we'll bring it home to, let's compare it to a general household debt ratio. And to keep it fair, everybody's situations are different. But I pulled this information from the census.gov for Burke County. So according to that website, the median household income for a household in Burke County is $44,557. And all we're going to look at is just a typical mortgage, which is a little over $8,000 per year in Burke County. So if this was the only debt, if a mortgage is the only debt that a typical household had, then the debt ratio, which we just looked at for the town, the debt ratio for this typical household would be a little over 18%. So this doesn't include any other debt like credit cards or a vehicle loan that you might have. Just the mortgage would be 18%. So if we compare that to the town debt, it's 4.28, and the median household would be 18.61. So, you go home tonight, that's a fun little exercise you can do with your own finances. Everybody's situation is different, but just do the calculations and see what you come up with and how it compares over here. Speaking of debt again, so there's something called the legal debt margin. You can find this in the town's audit. But according to the general statutes, which is regulated again by the LGC or the local government commission, the town can issue up to 8% of the total assessed value of taxable property located within the town. So for Valdese, this means in 2021, the legal debt margin was just under $26 million. And for this purpose, we do combine the general and the utility fund debts to compare. So the outstanding debt amount for both funds combined was $10.3 million. And compare that to the $25 million. So what that means is currently the town's using 40% of that capacity between what we're legally can do and what we actually have. So we're going to transition to a little bit of an economic outlook now. and we're going to look at the local and the national level. So first, for the local level, some current projects that we know are coming up. We've got the Pine Crossing, that's over at the Crow Hill Park area. That's going to be a tax value of about $9.8 million. Then we got 2 downtown development or apartment complexes happening. The Tron Place and the historic Valdese Weavers Mill, going to add about $20 million. And then in 2021, we had residential construction of about $5.5 million. So, you know, if you add all those tax values up, over the next few years, we're going to see the benefits and the revenues coming in from those additional tax values, which is going to add, you know, roughly a little under $200,000 to the general fund portion of revenues coming in. And on top of that, we've got some other items that we couldn't really put a dollar value on, but we know are going to help the town's revenues coming in, such as the lakefront subdivisions. They're continuing being built out and gaining some homes up there. We've got a project called Valdese Bluffs that's on the horizon, and then we got the Edelweiss subdivision coming up as well. That's going to add some homes. And on top of that, when you get population coming in, that's going to help the sales tax formula that the state uses to bring in more sales tax revenues for Valdese as well. So not only do your property tax values go up, but your population goes up as well. And then at the national level, what we really want to focus on is some things that, you know, by delaying either of these projects, whether it be the renovation or the new construction, delaying it's going to increase costs. And the reason for that is, you know, the GDP, the gross domestic product, they're anticipating growing nearly 4% in 2022. And then, of course, we got the ongoing tense relations with China. That's causing some material shortages, cost risk going up. And something we've all experienced is a shortage of labor, especially in the construction industry. You know, this shortage is creating increased wages, so these construction companies, their wages are going up, that they have to pay their employees, which in turn gets passed to the end user. And then finally, we got some interest rate hikes that, you know, we've heard the Federal Reserve talking about. So what that's going to happen is if these rate hikes do happen throughout the year, the rates that you're going to see on the next slide, which is 2.25%, what we're looking at right now for a loan, if those rate hikes happen, that percentage is going to keep climbing for the town. So when we borrow money, if we delay it, it's going to cost us more in interest overall. So finally, the financing comparison. So using the numbers that Marty presented to you a few minutes ago of new construction, renovation, both would be a 40-year loan from the USDA, which is federal money that Marty was talking about. We would be able to get the same rate on each loan. So this would be what the annual payment would be on new construction, $269,000 compared to $247,000 on the renovation side. And it's important to remember that whatever option's chosen, the town is not going to, it won't require a tax increase or cuts to any existing services. So that's the end of my presentation there. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have later on.
Okay, that includes our presentation. Next will come the questions and answers section. But before that, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Let everybody stretch your legs. If you want to speak or ask a question tonight, please sign up down here at the podium, the sheet, and there's a pen there for your name and address. Thank you. Okay, let's get started with the question and answer segment. Just a reminder, when you come up, state your name and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to ask your questions or state your opinion. And once you go back and sit down, if you think of something else or you didn't get to finish, then you can come back for another 5 minutes, okay? Which lights? You take a bow? Okay. Our first speaker tonight is Debbie Bradley.
Hi, my name is Debbie Bradley. I live in Morgan Trace. And thank you for the opportunity to speak and to hear this. This has been an excellent presentation. Even the finance presentation was very well done and very interesting. In my neighborhood, we've seen a 28% growth in 13 years, which is astounding. And we have a builder who wants to build 4 more houses there, so we're seeing a lot of growth. And I noticed on the slide earlier, does the plan for the new building or the existing building allow for that kind of growth, at least 5% growth over 10 years? It seemed to me that the existing building is kind of landlocked, and I'm not sure it does allow for growth.
Yes, the existing building is landlocked at this time.
Okay, but the new building would allow for some growth?
Marty's going to answer that question.
Okay.
Excuse me. In the space needs assessment that was conducted earlier, there were space needs identified for a 20-year need. And within that need, there was a larger building proposed. And in order to scale back to help control costs, the size of the building was reduced. But due to the reduction, there is still space available to help address some of those 20-year needs. Not everything would be provided, but there's space for additional staff that would be that would need to be provided on the fire and police. I didn't talk about it, but if you saw on the new proposed plan, the site work is being designed to allow the addition of an additional fire truck bay to be added on the west side of the building. So that would increase vehicle space from 4 drive-through bays or 8 back ends to 5 drive-through bays or 10 back ends. So there is the ability to expand for additional vehicle. The building itself is large enough to accommodate, as time grows and new equipment is brought in and vehicles are larger, it will accommodate larger vehicles because the doors are larger. At the existing facility, there is limitation on growth. It's landlocked. The bays are small and can't be expanded. The doors are small and due to headroom and width clearances, we can't get larger vehicles into the space much than what's already there now.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, would the new building, I think it would help tremendously with safety. If anyone that watches and hears some of the stuff on the news that's going on with police and fire and safety, 1 or 2 workers' comp claims, you would pay for this building. Having handled workers' comp for many years, I can tell you that. So it seems to me the safety issue is paramount to keep our folks safe and keep our citizens safe. I think the new building seems like the better option. One other question I had is, how would this affect our fire code? Would it help our fire code rating for insurance? Would it help?
Chief Stafford, or you want to answer that?
I can.
Which helps us all with our insurance.
It's kind of hard to say. It sure will not hurt us. We just went through the inspection that we go through every 5 to 7 years, just the month of January. And the time before that, it was more than 5 years. And we dropped from a category 5 or a level 5 to a level 4 in 2015. And we're hoping we'll get to drop again to a level 3 this year based on the inspector's comments and stuff like that. And that's really good for a community and a department our size. The building itself, doesn't really have that much bearing on the insurance. They look at stuff like the equipment, the personnel, how much training you have, your water system, how often you inspect hydrants, and do fire inspections, all that kind of stuff. So the building itself, other than its location, is not really, doesn't have a huge bearing on the rating itself. And the building, to get maximum credit, should be, the more houses you have within a mile and a half, you get a little more credit for it. And where we're moving it and the distances from the main part of town is not going to hurt us any. Very little, if any at all, because we'll be gaining some on the southeast side of town if the decision is made to build a new building.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well, like I said, this has been very helpful and very interesting, and I was a little undecided before seeing the presentation. I read all the information you had on the internet, but it seems to me, after hearing this, that it's kind of a no-brainer for safety and training, which is paramount with police and fire service, that a new building is the better way to go. And
Debbie.
it seems to be long-term the better way.
Debbie, just to interject something here, as far as insurance is concerned, Valdese is a protection class 5, so building a new building would not give citizens a lower insurance rate in Valdese. They're already getting an exceptionally low rate because of full-time staff and the quality of the equipment. But the Department of Insurance conducts those surveys from time to time. But in all honesty, insurance rates, I wish I could say this, but insurance rates would probably not go down.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the time and particularly for y'all's service. Valdese, I think, gives tremendous service. Keep our recycling. I know we're not supposed to talk about other things, but all the services are just excellent. And the times I've had to call for police and fire, the response has been quick and polite and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, our next speaker, Mr. Harvey.
Before I start, I was asked to deliver this to the mayor, but I'll read it with the town clerk.
Thank you.
My name is Glenn Harvey. My address is 801 Michael Avenue, Northeast. And the envelope that I left was, I was asked to drop it off by some citizens who are out talking to people around the Pine Burst site. They've asked people to sign petitions, and there are 81 signatures on there of people saying, please don't put the fire station in our neighborhood, put it downtown. My comments this evening are really to the people out here rather than to the town council, who I know gets tired hearing from me. I signed up to try to clarify a couple of underlying points in this evening's presentations, and I thought it might be informative to just run through quickly how architects come up with estimates and designs. In the real world that I know, I don't know that much about the municipality, but I think it's not that different. What happens, and by the way, I built 2 commercial buildings, one 20,000 square feet, one 45,000, so I've worked with architects a number of times. The way it usually goes is that we would ask employees to describe their facility needs and wishes. And then the second thing is the architect would put together some preliminary plans and estimates and come up with an estimate of what it would cost. And then the final step out in the world that I knew is that the CEO, the chief executive officer, or board of directors, who have the bottom line responsibility and relevant experience, will challenge the staff to justify those wishes and with verifiable data. And that's a critical step to change the wish list into a needs design. The gap in the town's case is that there was no process in place to challenge the wish list. For example, the design has been staff-driven since 2018, when the mayor announced that the consensus of the town council was to go with a $700,000 permanent repair. That led to an architect contract for $445,000 2 years later in September 2020 to design a 20,000 square foot building at an estimated cost of $6.5 million. And that didn't stop there, because since those numbers were revealed last summer, the wish list has continued to grow, and the building is now 24,500 square feet. So it's gone the other direction than the direction I've been accustomed to. One of the very serious concerns with tonight's presentation is that the numbers presented by the architectural firm and the staff have not been reviewed by the town's auditor or any CPA that I'm aware of. There were mistakes. And even our town council members did not see this financing plan until this evening. They saw it at the same time as us. That doesn't seem quite right. Let me address an accounting error and an omission in the architect's presentation. The the errors I'm going to point out in the omission had nothing to do with the numbers were presented. It's beyond that. The town obtained 18 acres and an old mill in Pineberry at a bargain price of $98,000. That 18 acres is a town asset with a tax value of $312,000. Its market value is undoubtedly more than the tax value, just like the market value of your home and my home is a lot higher than our tax value. But the architect, in arriving at the cost for the new building, used the purchase price of $98,000 as cost of the new building, not the $300,000 value of that property. If you've got a lot that the market says is worth $30,000, it doesn't matter whether you inherited it or you paid $10,000 for it or you paid $40,000 for it. It's worth $30,000, and if you build on it, that's what you're absorbing. Or you can sell it for $30,000. So, at any rate, the building cost was understated by $200,000 because that land was considered $98,000 of value instead of the $300,000 that it would bring on the marketplace. More important, if the town council decides to renovate the new building, renovate the old building, the town would then sell that $300,000 property, and that should be $300,000 that comes off the cost of renovating the existing property. One more brief item I'll mention is that if this town council decides to abandon the existing facility and build a new one out in the residential community, surely they cannot leave the abandoned property, which is distressed now, as we heard ad nauseum. They can't leave it there to rot and fall down. They're going to have to demolish it. Won't that be a cost that would be added to the cost of building a new building out in the residential community?
Glenn, you're about done.
And in summary, regardless of all the other numbers, these items I cited, if you add them up, it's about $500,000 to $700,000 savings if you renovate rather than build a new one. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it. Okay, our next speaker is Roy Sweesey. Thank you, Jessica.
I'm Roy Sweesey. I live at 1110 Tangle Cliff Avenue in Valdese. I was on the council when this problem first started, and we heard from civil engineers and structural engineers and architectural engineers. I want to start out, though, by thanking the council, mayor, our staff, especially Mr. Bill and the finance guy for the presentations that they gave. I did not come to give my opinion. I just wanted to state a few facts. I'm not loud enough. Oh, I'm sorry. The current location of the police and fire department is unsafe. It's dangerous to the personnel and equipment, and that was verified by civil engineers, West Consultants, and McGill and Associates, structural engineer, architectural engineers. It's been checked out. It's not just somebody's opinion. And the seismic data that was mentioned by Mr. Bill, I recently looked that up. Earthquake history goes back a long way in North Carolina, but I looked up from January the 1st of 2019 until 3 days ago in 2022, there were nearly 450 earthquakes in North Carolina. Now, about half of those were less than 2.0 on the Richter scale, but the others, slightly more than half, were 2.0 to 3.0, or even a few of them even higher. And it doesn't take much to shake a wall that has no structural integrity to make it fall down. And we have people working in it there. We have expensive equipment in there. We don't want that building to fall on anybody. The apartment building in Florida that fell down was there, and everybody was happy and working in there and coming and going, and then it went one day, and that's all it takes. Repairing the existing structure would require relocating police and fire services during repairs. It would require updating the facility to meet current standards. And despite the good location, which is what a lot of people are in favor of, that location would not be adequate even if we did all of the repairs that Mr. Beal was talking about. It would not meet the needs of our growing community. The property is just too small. We would be throwing good money after bad. A new building on a site large enough to meet our needs will cost half as much now as it would cost if we postpone it for 10 years or more. The Pineborough site is the best available location that is large enough to meet our needs. Other sites were looked at, several other sites, but of the sites that are available, that's the best one. Other sites would not meet our needs for various reasons. They were too small, or logistically, because of topography or other reasons, not suitable. And to reiterate what has been presented already, no increase in taxes is planned, no reduction in services is planned. The project will be funded by USDA as a government agency over a period of 40 years. And that 40 years doesn't mean all that much because we have a history of paying back before our loan term is up. So that will save even more money. This is a no-brainer. Don't waste money on a building that will still be inadequate, even if it's renovated. Use that money for a facility that will meet the needs of our growing community. Valdese citizens receive more services of great quality for their tax dollars than most communities. We have an excellent police force that keeps us in the top 10% of the safest communities in the entire state, year after year after year. Our fire department, with their proactive practices, inspections and so on, as well as all their firefighting abilities and so on. But the proactive, preventing fires is what helps keep us in a lower insurance rate. I would like to thank all of you for what you do, because we have very highly qualified department heads, good employees in all the departments. We have a good mayor and council that think about every issue that comes before them and look at the facts and make decisions based on those facts rather than simple opinion. Thank you all for what you do, and thank you for this presentation. This, I think, is a major asset for us.
Thank you, Mr. Sweesey.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make one comment on that. I'd like to make a comment. Councilman Stevenson's there, and Mr. Councilman Sweesey is there, and Mayor Black I don't think is here, but Francis and myself both were on the council at that time. There is no other land. We've looked at every land in the town of Valdese. You find me land to build, we'll move it somewhere else, but there is no other land. And as Glenn Harvey said, it cost $300,000. Well, we paid $98,000 for the land. The mill was given to us. We didn't pay for the mill was given to us. The land we paid for, whether we use it as a fire department or we use it to build buildings, the land is paid and it's ours. It's a town asset that we can use. But I will tell you, you can ask either one of them out there, there is no other land in Valdese. None. If you find some, let me know. We can talk about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Yep, good point. Okay, our next speaker, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Jonas Johnson.
Thank you. My name is Jonas Johnson. I oversee research at the Economic Research Institute, and I'm a resident of Valdese, a concerned citizen. In this discussion so far, I haven't seen a comparison to other towns of our size that are similar to us. So I decided to examine the debt load of 84 similar-sized towns in North Carolina in 2020. This analysis compared the total debt of each town to the value of its taxable property, essentially the debt load, how much property is available for tax. In this study, Valdese had a debt load of 1.4%, and that is in contrast to the overall average of the 84.6%. So this places Valdese in the 79th percentile, which means that 79% of similar-sized towns in North Carolina had a smaller debt load to us. So this was 2020 data. I should note that since then there is an additional $2 million in debt that has been put into the town. Now I didn't include that figure in the values that I initially wrote out because I wanted to do an apples-to-apples comparison. However, with an understanding of that, we can adjust those figures to get a rough estimate of where we would fall today with the additional $2 million. So with that additional values, that puts us in the 91st percentile in terms of debt, and so 91% of towns have less debt than we do. So, and I also took a look at what would it mean if we added an additional $7 million debt to our load. So with that, out of all of the towns that reported data in our size range, that's those 84, there would only be one town that would have a larger debt load than us, and that is, let's see, what's their name? Farmville, not the video game, it's an actual town. They took the debt on in 2017 and 2019. Something to note is with taking us to that number 2 position in terms of debt load, the number 3 town, the one that would be directly under us, is Akoshi. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's happened in that town. They're a similar sized town to us with 4,800 residents, 5.2 million in revenue. In 2001, they took on a significant load of debt to fund the construction of a police station, fire station, and resurfaced roads. Unfortunately, in 2014, they were unable to meet their obligations and were declared insolvent by the North Carolina Local Government Commission. The commission assumed control over the town's finances, and they reduced expenses to the legally required minimum. And the town didn't have a say in it. Of course, that is a significant concern and not something that I want to have happen in Valdese, and I know none of us want that. I was looking at the 2021 audit, and there was one thing that I noticed that raised a little bit of a concern, and specifically within the pension plan, it was predicted there was a 7% asset increase that was predicted, but given the asset allocation, I don't know if that is possible. Specifically, for example, 30% of the assets are invested in T-notes, which I believe those are right around 0.5% right now. So one of the concerns is 15, 20 years from now. Right now, I suspect this plan would work out, but 15, 20 years from now, we could be looking at a pension deficit at the same time when we have a large debt level. And the concern, of course, is that could constrain our room to maneuver. We don't want to see things like cuts in pensions or cuts in libraries, roads, or the rec. So before we take on this level of debt, we should take a look very carefully at, you know, is this level of debt something that we can legitimately accommodate? And
Dr. Jones, your time is up, sir.
okay, thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you, I
it.
appreciate
And
it.
one note with that, the town does not maintain a pension system, but we are part of the North Carolina Local Government Retirement System. Therefore, the town has no liability when it comes to any kind of future pensions for retirees.
So that particular one.
I have a question too, if I could, sir. When you compared these other towns, did you compare the level of services that were provided?
No, that was
Okay.
not in those specific data.
Okay.
If you'd like any, if you'd like the map or any of that, let me know and I'll be happy to send it your way.
Thank you, I appreciate you, thank you. Okay. Our next speaker, Sandy Walker.
Mayor and council, thank you for allowing the public to have this time to make their comments. I'm Sandy Walker. I'm a resident of Valdese, 124 Main Street West in Valdese, and I get to hear the fire trucks go by, and really, it's not that bad. Anyway, just a couple comments. I worked for WSVM for a number of years, and we ran a report that the mayor did monthly called the Valdese Report. And I'm not sure exactly what date it was. I think it was 2008 or 9. But Mayor Hatley said then, and we had him recorded, said then that it would cost $800,000 to remodel the town hall for everybody. But it'd be cheaper to go and build another building for everybody. Well, we have another building, but it's not for everybody. And $800,000, well, we ended up spending $1.4 million for that. And now I don't understand how we've got to the price of over $6 million for just the fire department and police department. A number of years ago, I attended a Citizens Academy that the town started. And when we had the presentations from the fire department and from the police department, our chiefs of both of those departments gave us the impression that they were the best since sliced bread. They took us, toured us the facility, showed us everything. This is wonderful, this is wonderful, this is wonderful. Okay, now we're a few years down the road, and it sounds like the building's about to collapse. And I'm just wondering what's changed in that little bit of time. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm just asking, if this is so bad and everything, is this just fear-mongering, trying to scare the people into, we have to have this right now? And that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seth, can we have Mr. Bill address the question regarding the increase projected cost for repairing the building?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because initially we had a number that was lower, now the number's higher, and I think that needs to be answered.
The estimation well, let me back up and address a previous comment. Just so that you know, there were earlier numbers that were sent out, and the purpose was not a purpose. There was an error that was made on my part. It's simply the error was in the renovation cost. Everything was prepared on a spreadsheet, and the sales that I selected to go into the sum formula, I selected the dividing line that was underneath the $1.2 million value for a temporary facility. So when that error was discovered, we made the correction, and that was the part of an increase in cost for the renovation of the facility to include a temporarily relocation spot. So that explains that error. To talk about increase in cost, to keep the existing facility and upgrade it to current day standards. In our presentation, we talked about repairing the damage that's there now. And then we talked about that puts the building back in the condition, and this is by the definition of the existing building code. It replaces the building and puts it back into the condition that it was at the time that it was built in compliance with the code, which would be 1975, 1978. At that time, there was no requirement to design buildings in the state of North Carolina to resist seismic forces. Current day code, to bring this facility up, we are including cost for we're calling the evasive renovation, which is called the bracing, providing a bracing structure to support the existing structural system. That increases the cost. We have seen increases in cost across the board since COVID began. In the last 3-4 years, costs have risen approximately 40%. We have supply chain problems. Anyone that goes into construction, it's hard to identify the length of construction because no one knows what the holdup is going to be on the supply chain, where it's coming from. Inventory's backed up, lead times are backed up. I had a conversation with a contractor about a pre-engineered metal building. From the day that you submit shop drawings to the manufacturer, they're telling you this was a week ago, it will take 5 months for the building to leave the factory. So construction is being redefined both in cost and in time, supplies, and labor. I hope that answers your question. If that's what you're referring to, if I've left out something, I'll add to it.
Marty, I was asked during our break, could you explain the temporary fire facility, that $1.2 million? What exactly will that entail? What will that building be used for?
It was something that we've identified. Look, you've got to relocate temporarily out of the existing facility in order to make the necessary renovations. So the thought was, okay, what size space will we need? What needs to relocate? At least the minimum, we need to relocate all the fire vehicles and the equipment that are in those fire truck bays. The estimate is like a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot space to accommodate that. So we used an 8,000 square foot space at a $150 per square foot charge, which is $1.2 million. And the reason why it was that cost is you put up a building, okay, the building code doesn't have a differentiation between a permanent structure and a temporary structure. Even though we're calling it a temporary facility, under the building code, it would have to be designed as a permanent structure, which has its own requirements. It would have to be designed as a Category 4 essential facility, which means it's going to have to be a very rigid and strong building based upon things that we've already talked about. On top of that, it's got to meet certain other code requirements for public safety facilities. So even though it is talked about as a temporary structure, it actually has to be designed and constructed compliant with the building code.
What will happen to that building?
That is something that either it would be removed and demolished, or if there is some need in the town that could take over the occupancy.
It's an awful waste of money. Thank you, council.
Okay, our next speaker is Bud Levan.
My name's Bud Levan. I live on Kerrville Street, 1006 Kerrville Street, in Valdese. I appreciate the opportunity to ask my question tonight to the council or whoever may be able to answer it. We're going to borrow the money either way, for around $7 million. It's only like a $500,000 difference. And the new building is going to be the way to go. But my question is, as a homeowner and a property owner in the town, what happens, let's say, the town somehow defaults because of unpredictable circumstances. Let's say our water and sewer lines start collapsing and things start falling apart with the infrastructure, and we have to borrow $10 million to fix that because we can't live without water and sewer and things like that. So what happens to me as a homeowner, my properties, if for some reason we default on that loan, we can't make it, go in the red? What am I to expect? What, is going to happen to my properties and things that I own here in town? I've heard USDA loan, federal grant money, but how much? So what happens? What happens if we default? We can't pay it. Something comes up. We've got too much debt, can't make the payment.
A black swan event like COVID or something is what you're talking about. Something out of.
I'm just saying, each year, the water line on my street gets repaired. There's holes in it. It's falling apart. It's not going to last forever. My understanding is put in the 1960s. Sooner or later, it's going to collapse. They replaced the one on Main Street, and that was in the millions to do that. Okay, let's say we have 2 or 3 streets that happens to about the same time, same age. And it's going to take millions of dollars to fix it. And here we are, we're at the cap of what we can borrow. It's my understanding we don't have millions of dollars laying around in a bank account somewhere just in case. So what happens? What happens to my property, the home I own in this town, if it goes bankrupt?
Okay, I got your point. I'm going to try to answer your question.
Yes.
And if I don't answer it, tell me. The town has a capital improvement project in which we replace water lines and major pieces of equipment every year. So that takes care of the water line problem.
We try to develop a plan for the utility fund, the general fund, that tries to look out of all the issues we have over the next 10 years, and that we develop a financing plan to address all those issues. So, hopefully nothing catastrophic would ever happen because we are doing the proper planning to replace the things that get replaced.
But what if it does?
Well,
what happens?
None of us can tell the future. Another thing that benefits us in this is the local government commission. They prevent us, or any town in North Carolina, from getting in that type of situation.
So what you're saying, if we can't pay the loan, someone's going to come in and take over? The government's going to take over?
No, I didn't say that. I said the local government commission prevents us from getting in that type of situation, from borrowing more money than what we can afford to borrow.
So what you're saying is we're approved for roughly almost $25 million.
I think the town's limit on debt as far as percentage, and I think it was it 18%, Bo? 28%? It comes to about 30 million is our limit.
Okay, and this will be, by the time it's paid, about a $10 million loan for the new fire department.
Bo's going to address you.
So, a good question. I appreciate your concerns as a fellow homeowner myself. Remember what we talked about earlier is you have the general fund and utility fund.
Right.
So the revenues and expenses under the general fund are only being paid for the general fund services. So if something catastrophic happened, like you said, with your water lines, that would fall under the utility fund itself. So those monies are set aside. They're not touching the general fund side. So the utility fund would be the one responsible to meet those demands. On top of that, if something really big happened and the town couldn't meet those demands, the state actually has an emergency fund that we could apply to get help if something happened with your water lines that just kind of collapsed and the town can't afford it. There are emergency grants out there on the water and utility side that we could tap into. But we try not to do that because the state, they like to regulate that. But if that helps answer your question a little bit.
So to make me feel better, if we do default for some reason, then I'm not gonna get a certified letter in the mail that says, Mr. Levan, you're gonna have to come up with $5,000 or $10,000 in the next 2 weeks or forfeit your properties because this happened.
That's kind of far-fetched, but no, that's not going to happen. I can sit here and tell you that.
Okay, well,
Okay.
make me feel better.
Well,
because
I'm
represent-
telling you, that ain't going to
You
happen.
represent us, and
Yes,
you're
sir.
taking this loan out for us.
Well,
It's our
I'm
own,
not
it's
going to
our
say
own,
we're,
we own it,
yeah.
yeah.
We're,
So I
that's
just
not
wanna
going to
make
happen.
sure, you know, that, in the future, because if it were, I'm ready to put my place up for sale.
Yeah, I assure you it won't happen. How's that?
All right.
I promise.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for serving
I
us.
appreciate
I mean,
you.
it's a thankless job, and I appreciate you. and your
Thank
service.
you. I need a raise.
Good night.
Jack, very good questions.
It was a good question. Mr. Richard Byers. What is that? Is that he? Richard Byers? Okay.
I'm Richard Byers. I live on Woodland Street. I've been in Valdese 60 years. I was in schools, then in business for 37 years, and I retired. But being a businessman, I've got some questions about this. I agree with this. I know we need to have the fire department, no question. I believe everything he says. But if I look at this like Mr. Sweesey was just saying, from a liability standpoint, tomorrow, I would have engineers, structural engineers over giving me bids how much it costs just to fix those walls. And I wouldn't spend another dime on that building. Then you could get it stable. You wouldn't have to pay this $1 million to go out and put everybody out while you build another one. And you could do that. It looked like to me it could save some money. And I know you got some hard decisions to make. I've done that 20 years, and it was, you make some good ones, but I always try to say, let's do what's best for the people in Valdese. And another thing, I traveled in sales. I'd go around towns, a lot of towns, larger than Valdese. They had nice fire departments, but they didn't have all these extras. They'd have nice metal buildings like EMS or these fire departments out there. I know it don't cost $8–10 million to put those buildings up. And another thing, if you're looking at what inflation's up, the highest it's been in 40 years. Costs are going up, cost of living 14% a month. People, you know, it hurts the people in town. And I think y'all maybe look at something you could cut costs on, if you could, because like he said, everything's going up every day. My son's building a house right now and it's going up more like it was before. So I mean, the quicker you get it done, the more money you're gonna save. So I feel sorry for you. You're gonna have to make some tough decisions.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate you. I feel sorry for him. Okay, Mr. Jimmy Jackman.
Council and citizens of Valdese. I first off wanted to make a comment about the
Mr. Jackman, if you would state your name and address, please.
Jim Jackman, 207 Walsh Drive. I first wanted to make a statement concerning what the architect said about having to have an extra building if we renovate this one. That's one approach. It's not the wisest approach. There's at least 2 or 3 other ways to do that without having another building. And that's been done over and over. You're sitting in a building tonight that's 100 years old, was renovated. Clark Irving, you need to take a trip down there and take a look at his buildings. Renovated. Years and years older than our town public safety building. So I just want to make that comment to start with. I want to share some common sense observations that I've gotten when I ran for office here in Valdese. The council asks the citizens for the opportunity to serve them. The citizens of Valdese elected the council to serve them. The citizens feel the managerial staff is attempting to take over the responsibilities of the town council and leaving out the desire of the citizens of this town altogether. Now, folks, that's a concern that's out there, and I share it as honestly as I can share it. Now let's look back at what the citizens just told the council in November. We had 3 candidates running for mayor. 2 of those candidates wanted to repair our existing public safety building. The 3rd candidate wanted to build a new building. The 2 candidates...
Mr. Jackman, if I can interrupt you just a minute, your last statement's not correct. I didn't run for the mayor's office on the promise to build a new building, sir. I never actually stated that in any
Well,
way.
that was the word that's around town. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I told you
That's
to start.
fine. I understand.
I told you to start with that I was responding to what was told me by the
I
citizens
understand,
at the
but
time.
I want it to be known that I didn't run
Okay.
to build a new fire
All right,
department.
well, that assumption was out there. The 2 candidates wanted to repair the public safety building. If you would add their votes together, they totaled even more than the vote the mayor we elected. So that perception was out there, and I say that to the council. You need to really consider the people you're representing and their desires. Now, let's look at some of the policies for repairing our present public safety building. It's been mentioned before, I'll mention it again. Its location is an optimum location for saving lives and property. It's the better condition than our 100-year-old building we're in tonight. You know, overseas, they never tear a building down. They always renovate. We here in America always think we got to bulldoze it and start over. But that always costs more money, and we've seen that tonight with the numbers. The existing public safety building has the old town hall square footage available for expansion, weight room, and any other desired items that those departments in there might want. I've been a practicing professional engineer for approximately 50 years, heading up the building of such projects as East Burke Stadium, Spring Park, Valdese Trail of Faith, East Burke Community Hall and Pool, New Burke County Courthouse and Jail, Burke County EMS Services, Solid Waste Project, and a number of smaller projects. So I've been involved in construction all my life, what you can and can't do with an old building. Heritage Arts Center building, again, Clark Irvin's building down here. Council needs to take a look at those. I've read the first professional engineer's report and examined the structure myself, and repairing the existing public safety building is certainly possible and feasible. The citizens of Valdese can have a good public safety building for years and years to come. And the examples are all over this town where buildings have been renovated. We can do that. Now let's look at our limitations to serving this burdensome debt. Last week, the report came out on the inflation rate, 7%. That 7% is going to cost everybody in this room in this town, on average families, $275 a month.
Your
Folks,
time's about up, Mr. Jackman.
Okay, wrap it up. That amounts to $3,300 per average family. Where's that money coming from? We need to really consider the cost of what we're doing here, folks. Let's represent the people, not a grandiose building.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Brooke Hefner.
Thank you, Council. I actually had no intention of speaking tonight, but one of my questions, they were answered. The numbers that we were presented on the town agenda packet, which obviously he's already called, it's already been called out. I actually did call out a while ago, or a few minutes ago, but $1.2 million difference on the repair, but there was $700,000 difference on the new construction. It had dropped $700,000. I think, honestly, I think everybody deserves honest and true numbers sent back out and revisited for everyone to look at, because we come into this and we were all kind of, I'd looked over the numbers and, it was totally different, and then all of a sudden they come up and they're almost the same. I agree, if it's $500,000, you need to build a new building. But I think everybody deserves to get a clear picture of the numbers.
Okay, Bo or Marty will answer that question, Brooke.
So yeah, you're talking about the new construction costs?
Correct.
Okay. So that cost that was stated, the reason why there's that $700,000 difference is the state grant that we've been awarded that can be applied to either the renovations or the new construction. So that's what was presented, the revised number that you're looking at is the actual loan amount that we're talking about. The building cost is deducting that state grant. And then we had almost $200,000 that we paid so far towards that new project, which includes the land costs that we've purchased already. And then we paid some architectural fees for the programming and schematic design of what you've seen tonight. So that equals about $700,000. That comes off that top number. So that the loan amount would be the $7 million that you're seeing.
Was that same $700,000 taken off the remodel construction?
The $500,000 was. We haven't paid $200 towards any renovation costs yet.
You said the 200 part of that was involved in
the land purchase.
The land purchase.
Yeah.
So that's part of.
Yeah. So the renovation, the 500, we did take that off to be fair, to compare both numbers, but we haven't paid anything towards that renovation cost like we have for the new construction.
I think that probably calls back into the question, what Mr. Harvey had said. If we're going to take it off one, we need to take it off the other, because we could sell that property for $300,000. Which we're not doing.
Right, but if you think about the downtown property, though, we could sell that as well. So we figured that's probably, in that downtown property probably is a little more valuable. So those kind of offset the numbers that we don't have. We wanted to really use numbers that we do have. So,
okay,
we
well,
can
I
sell you
think the biggest thing, okay, that sounds reasonable, but I do think we ought to at least revisit that and send those out, clarify all the numbers. That would be my request.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we would plan to get the updated information sent out via the website tomorrow.
Oh, I forgot to say who I was. Brooke Hebner, 207 Forest Drive.
Yeah, I had you an X mark.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. And honestly, I know some people would probably think I am completely against building a new fire department. I'm actually not. I respect what you guys are doing. I am against a heavy debt load. We have multiple needs in the community. As I told Paul, we're begging the community for $300,000 to remodel the gym, and we're wanting to build an $8 million fire department. I mean, let's take a look at that. That's my thing is, if we can build a fire department for $1.2 million to house, and it has to be up to code to house our fire trucks, what can we build a full-size, full-scale building for possibly $3 million, because it's already going to be up to code. What more are we adding? Just something to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay, our next speaker is Jerry Williams.
Jerry Williams. I live out on 912 Briggs Street, pretty close to the mayor, my neighbor.
Don't tell everybody. They won't come see you.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got some questions. The biggest thing I'm asking is, why is everybody determined to get out of the middle of town to move the fire department and police department? I don't understand that.
Okay, I think Councilman Ogle discussed that a little bit ago, if you want to touch on that
Yeah,
again.
we, probably maybe 2018, 2019, we looked at every piece of property in Valdese, every one of them. And the only one we could even talk about was the one we're looking at. We talked about the Stroop property. I think it is right behind the Rock Drug Store. They've already had something going, already sold part of it for something else. We talked about the Burke Yarns. Again, it was already sold. The Alba Waldensian building, the corporate building, was already being looked at, plus it needed so much renovation. I don't know of any other place that we'd have to divide them up, and I think the architect said if we divided the police and fire apart, it would cost more money than it would put them together, correct?
Well, that was my question on, why this, Alba building up there. I know you said it had been pursued, but have you tried it lately? I know it's not no 14 acres, but there's plenty of room there.
Where at?
That's where the Alba
Well, the
Waldensian.
Alba building's been purchased
Yeah.
with the John Louis. They've already purchased it. They're gonna use it, and they're gonna use
Oh, they're
storage and
gonna-
other stuff. They purchased both of them.
Okay, so it's not available anyway.
No, sir.
Okay. All right, this property down there at the Roston property, is that included in the $3 million?
We looked at the Roston property, and we have looked at it, but because of the cost of the state's requirement to bring those vehicles out onto a main highway 70 and have it, because you can't bring them straight out because they can't make the turn. I think it was $600,000 just to do that part. And also the fact that if we built that over at the Roston property, we would end up with a 2-story building. So it would cost more money to add that with elevators and everything else than it would to build a plain thing. Now, understand the Roston property was given to us if we build a fire department. Okay, that's it. But we got this property is just about the same cost.
That's a good comment, Councilman Ogle. I think maybe R.J. Mosley can give us a little more clarification, because he did that study for the town.
Well, now, this property you got, does that include the $3 million, in the $3 million?
I don't understand where the $3 million's coming from.
I'm talking about the property. And does that come out of the $3 million?
Maybe the 300,000, you talking about the 300?
I'm not sure what 3 million you're talking about, Jerry. I'm sorry.
I'm talking
The
about
property at Pineborough we purchased for $98,000 was how much it cost.
Okay, that's what I was wanting. Okay,
really-
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
You bring up an excellent point about the Ralston property, and I think R.J. should do a little more context to that question.
Good point.
Yeah, certainly. And I'll apologize. I've got a broken foot if anybody doesn't see me stand up. But I do want to say we looked at, when we were going through that process of evaluating if there's a new facility to be built, looking at the available property throughout town, it really boiled down to availability, which was Ralston site and the Pineborough site. And so we looked at a comparison there, trying to be as even as we could be, apples to apples between those two. And like Councilman Ogle said, the big differences there were access out of the Ralston property. And so that turned into a significant effort to create the right turning movements for traffic to get mainly the fire truck, large apparatus, to get out of the building and onto Highway 70. And then that also turned into a significant improvement at the intersection of Laurel, North Laurel there, and Main Street. So right there at the bakery was going to require a significant renovation or rework of that intersection to be able to make that turn. So those were significant costs that added into that particular site's overall development, as well as that site is only about 2.5 or 2.6 acres, if I remember correctly. And so getting the square footage that we were trying to target for that overall facility, either one required a 2-story building that was going to increase overall costs, or it required extensive retaining walls to be constructed around certain portions of the site so that you could create enough flat area to build a 1-story building on. So till you factored all that in together, it just, the way the final dollars and cents tallied up, it was less expensive to pursue the property on Pineborough.
Thank you, Jay.
And that property, Ralston property, is landlocked, so there's nowhere to go. That's it.
Okay, our next speaker, Mr. David Sweesey, sir.
is David Weesey. I live at 3318 Montana View Drive. And I want to comment, one, to the council for doing this. I think you all know I'm big on, I think you want to get a lot of public support for what you do. This is a good step. I'm a little dubious about it. I had to change my comments a lot because of things that I've already heard today. I was going to start off by commenting on the $1.2 million to build a temporary facility. To me, that sounded like nuts. And it caused me to doubt the numbers I'm hearing overall. But Mr. Beal, whoever he is, he sort of cleared that up for me. I guess $1.2 million is what we need, but I still don't know. Another comment, it seems like we're in a big rush to get this thing done, and we're charging ahead to build something at the absolute worst time to build anything. My thought would be maybe we could just slow down, and it seems to me we could repair the existing building so it's usable and wait till it's more reasonable to do a major construction project. Just my opinion. And I want to go back to something that Dr. Johnson said. I didn't understand a lot of what he said. I'm not an accountant, but he seems to know a lot about this. He's evidently not a medical doctor. If he's got a minute, I'd like him to come up and tell us what his criteria, his credentials are, if you would. Would you do that, Jonas? And am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to do that?
2 or 5 minutes?
I got 5 minutes. I can dance if I want to.
Sure.
And my wife will confirm this. David Weesey can squeeze a nickel to the Buffalo school haulers. Just because we can go into debt up to our eyeballs doesn't mean we should do it. And this guy made me think about that. Now to my question, kind of two questions. My friends out, and I know a few people out in the Pine Bur area, they were asking, they would kill me if I didn't ask, what's this going to do to their property values out there at Pine Bur? I don't know that anybody knows, but I think some sharp real estate guy could probably tell us. And then another question is, on this grant, it's my understanding that these grants require substantial public support. So one of my questions, you don't have to answer it now, what constitutes substantial public support? How is that measured? And conversely, what is public non-support? You can think about this and answer this on, what's your definition for support and non-support from the public? And doctor, if you would, because I'd like to know, what are your credentials? And if you can use the rest of my 5 minutes to say what you want to say.
Oh, sure. So I have a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from Clemson University, and I oversee research at the Economic Research Institute, where I research compensation, labor markets, and nonprofit, for-profit organizations.
Thank you. I think.
I said everything when I was. I did. All right.
But Dave, you brought up a good question about the state grant that we're receiving for repair or for renovation. I'd like for Bo to speak to if there's any strings attached to that or what the process is to obtain that money.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of working with the state right now, obtaining that grant, where I've submitted all the documentation that we need to submit for that. They're as far as public support versus non-public support, they don't require any of that. So
You say they do or don't?
They don't.
They
No.
don't require public support?
No. So we've already been awarded the grant through the state budget process.
Okay.
So all we got now is just a paperwork process of getting that money to come in.
Okay, well, I was misinformed on requiring public support.
Okay. But yeah.
Sure about that?
Yeah, because we're almost ready to receive the money, so.
Very much so. A lot of misinformation. Okay, folks, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to.
Okay, if you want to speak, come up to the podium, please. Okay, if you would state your name and address, please.
Mayor and Councilman, I beg of you to indulge
with me for 5 more minutes. My name is Willie Pascal. I live at 909 Garriole Avenue in Valdese, and I've lived, I'll turn 77 this year, but Valdese has always been my hometown. I speak tonight, I had not planned on speaking tonight, but Bo mentioned medium income in Valdese is $44,000. As many of you are like me, that $44,000 is a medium income, it's not a mean income. Most of us probably raised that $44,000 by coming to Valdese after a retirement in other communities or serving our country in other ways, proudly I would say. And the other $44,000, a lot of it probably comes nowadays from that income that comes from other communities. And but tonight I want to speak a little bit about those individuals who are not in our apartment tonight, or are not in our audience tonight, but perhaps a majority or a lot of them are below that $22,000 poverty level. Now, I visit weekly at Valdese Housing Authority to take care of administrative duties there, in addition to taking care or visiting other low-income persons. The Valdese Housing Authority houses people who are 30% below the poverty level in Valdese. I mean, and that's the high end of their income. Today, there was a lady that has $1,200 annually as her income. We have a very long waiting list of people in Valdese to occupy our housing. And we have, I make it a point to visit other public housing facilities in other counties, in other cities, and we have one of the best ones, I assure you. It's kept clean, it's kept up to standards, and we have a lot of people that are there. So what are we doing? I know that those retired people that are on a fixed income, we would hope that our priorities, we take a good look at our priorities. You know, we discussed Lakeview Acres, and we're betting on Lakeview Acres creating some more income. We were counting on Lakeview Acres building and put in a water line, which came from our utility fund, but we haven't seen the development. Our projection, as Bo has said, that the new apartments are gonna create jobs, create a business in Valdese, but we don't want that to fall through the crack. If we're willing to risk, or businesses are willing to risk and put these apartments in there, it seems to me that we want to have a good infrastructure, roads, and properties in good shape for people to want to move into Valdese. So I would beg the police department and the firemen to indulge us a little bit longer while we bring that revenue into Valdese to pay for a nice fire department. I am for a new fire department, be it renovated or be it a new building. And you know, there's probably not many people in this room that can stand up to me and say, I appreciate the visits you've made to my parents as I was away from home, and even that visit to me when I fell off the ladder. So thank you, fire department. But take a look at things and take a look at our priorities, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie, I appreciate it. Okay, there was another gentleman in the back.
I just wanted to get a little clarification from Bo on the, I wonder if we get some clarification from Bo on the financing. I got just a little lost. Roughly each one of these is, at the moment, you've got the renovation pumped up to match the new building, and that's pretty transparent. But assuming that either one's gonna take $7 million, where does that, how do you finance that $7 million? You mentioned the word grant. Now, I know the state is giving us $500,000 to use either way. What about the rest of it now?
Are you talking about how we're gonna pay for the loan? Is that what your question is?
Well, you said, you used the word grant. I don't know what you were talking about, whether you were talking about a loan or a grant for the other $7 million.
The grant,
Are we talking about getting a loan for $7
the
million?
grant is $500,000, and the rest we would probably look at the USDA for a loan.
Okay, $7 million loan then.
Right. 7 million versus 6.5 million for renovation.
Well,
Right,
okay.
so, yeah.
So $7 million loan, and that, did you put up what the annual cost would be for those, those loans at those levels?
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that. All right, and you say that does not require any evidence of community support to get the loan? Is that what you said?
We were talking about the grant.
No, I'm talking about the USDA loan.
The USDA loan, does it require community support? Is that what your question is?
Yeah.
RJ, any experience with that?
Well, you know, I actually talked to I don't want to, trap you in this, but when I talked to the head of the community division that gives the USDA loans, and I asked him if it requires community support, and he said it did. And then he talked about the median income levels and how that would affect whether you get a 30-year loan or a 40-year loan. I assume you've researched that and assume we can, and have proven that we can we can qualify for a 40-year loan. But at any rate,
so
when you said we don't need community support for the grant, that confused me because I think the primary financing is coming from a USDA loan.
Right. The grant is from the state of North Carolina.
Right.
The loan is federal.
Right.
And the town currently has 3 loans with the USDA, the town hall, a fire truck, and the splash pad at the recreation facility. So in the past, those did not require community support to get those loans. It just requires the town council to vote on obtaining the loan.
So,
from the
okay.
USDA.
All right.
Okay?
But you're sure it doesn't require community support now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Stevenson, sorry.
I'm Robert Stevenson. I live at 1009 Creekside Drive in Valdese, and I do appreciate the council and the people that are the architects and giving us all this information on this project. Just a couple things that strike me a little bit unusual. This last week, I understood that the town had extended an invitation to go visit the police department and fire department and see firsthand what they thought of the conditions there. And so I called Greg Stafford and made an appointment with him, and Jack Moss made an appointment with him. And I went over and went through the facility, and I was pretty shocked at the condition of our present facility. But on top of that, we got about part of the way through it, and Greg said, you know, so we extended this to all the people that are even against it or for it or whatever. And he said, you know how many people have been over here to look at it lately? I'm the first. And is that right, Greg? Yes, sir. And so I thought that was unusual. But so we get down to this talk of renovating new buildings, like Mr. Jackman was talking about. And just for instance, the bays in the fire department themselves. Renovated, I don't think we're talking about increasing the width of the bays at all, are we? And I've been on the board for the Lovelady Fire Department for over 6 years now, and I do know a little bit about it, and I know that 15 feet is not the standard of excellence or even quality or even, it's just very minimal. Bays need to be 20 feet, but there were a whole lot of other things that really never came up in anything tonight. Is if I understand, the floors of the bays, which never addressed that I heard tonight, are only 4 inches deep and got mesh in the concrete, and that is not up to present standards. I think they have to be, is this right, Greg, 8 inches and with rebar? Now to get the special, so in other words, they'd have to tear the entire floor in order to get, and then would we even be able to expand the width of the needed bays in the fire department, even if we tore up the floor? So to me, that pretty much says the only way we can solve this problem is a new fire department. Now, I do agree that, you know, we should try to save money any way we possibly can in Valdese. But the police department, it was, the armory room, it was all, it was surprising to me that it was that bad. And we really need a new facility, but I agree with people when we need to examine and try to cut costs any way we can. But I think we're in definite need of a new facility, and I don't think the renovation, and another thing, we ain't got the property at the old thing to do what we need to do at the old fire department and the police department. The property is not available. What, 1 acre? We're fixing to build one in Rutherford College, and we've got about 3 acres to do it with, and I think that should be about the right amount of land to have a access and to the bays and for all the equipment that we've got. I just think that we ought to go ahead with this project because it's not going to get any, everybody, let's wait till it gets cheaper. I don't believe it's going to get any cheaper. I think I know building costs are right now at their all-time high, but I don't think they're going to get any lower. So anyway, I just wanted to express my opinion on that and thank the council and hope for a good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Okay. You're up, sir.
I hadn't planned to make any comments, but I just want to thank the council for this presentation tonight. It's been very informative and very eye-opening. Valdese has been really lucky.
WT, I don't mean to interrupt. Could you give your name and address, please?
WT Sorrell, 102 Oakland Court, Valdese.
Thank you.
I think Valdese has been blessed to elect council members that the citizens have confidence in making good, solid decisions and evaluating all the options that's available to them. And this has been an impressive presentation. You've looked at experts, professionals, engineers, and architects to give their learned advice and to give their estimates based on the current situations. And I agree with the people that have spoken tonight. We can't wait. I think it's obvious we've got to do something. And if we've got the option to build a new building or repair an old one for almost the same cost, I think it's really obvious that we need to go ahead and get a new building that will serve the needs for several years in the future for Valdese. I also have a question about the renovation with the USDA loan. I know that's a qualified expense for USDA, but they only go to the appraised value of the building. And I would be real surprised if the appraised value of a used building is going to be anywhere near what the replacement cost, what the repair cost is going to be. So that's something you'll need to keep in mind with USDA. They may do it, but it may be at a 40 or 50 or 60% of the value and on 15 or 20 year life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else?
I'm Mary Ellen Weesey. I've lived in Valdese for 70. I'm almost 79. I lived in Valdese since 1979. It's been a wonderful place. We brought our kids up here.
Ms. Weesey, I apologize for interrupting, but could you give us your address, please? I know it's probably with that same fellow that you're sitting
live right here with him. 3318 Montana View.
Thank you.
I do. I spent last Saturday following that man around Pineberg, talking to everybody that would answer the door. People are not happy about having a fire station there. It's a small street. They complain about it's a through street and the cars go too fast. But I just wanted you to know, we spent literally all day. We started at 11 o'clock and I think we got home at 5:30. And if any of you who know my husband, you know, we talked a lot to a lot of people. And the message was clear. And I know everyone has said there's no other place, but I don't know, maybe somehow, somewhere, God will send another place and let the people in Pine Bar, keep their quiet little street with the fast cars driving through. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Josh Baker, and I actually live on Pine Bar. They knocked on my door right as I got home from work.
What was your address, sir? I'm sorry.
309 and 313. I have two houses right there.
Okay.
Actually,
Pine Bar.
Pine Bar. Basically, right across the street from where you're planning to build this thing.
Okay.
For one, I noticed Mr. Weesey asked the question about property values by building this there, and you never really answered that one. So I didn't know if you had the answer or if you were just going to wait.
I don't think there's any, and this is my opinion.
Okay.
And we'll be more than happy to research your question. But my opinion is I do not know of any property values that have gone down because a fire and police station's been built in their neighborhood. A prime example is the city of Hickory and the city of Morganton. The majority of their stations are in residential neighborhoods.
Okay. I was just curious since I have two properties right there. I was wondering how that's going to
Yes,
affect
sir. I understand. That's a good question.
Another one would be just a concern of mine is I'm a husband and father of 3 children. Who my littlest one is 3 years old, and how is this going to affect? And she already mentioned there's already too many traffic of guys burning the road up on motorcycles and stuff on that road anyway. I wish there was a speed bump there, but that's for another time. With the noises and things from the fire, I lived in Charlotte, right across from the airport and a fire department, police station. How that affects the sound and police coming up and down the roads as calls are. I'm just concerned for that when it comes to my children and stuff.
That's a good question, and I'll get Chief Stafford. Do you mind answering that?
That is a good question. I'll do my best to answer it, and it was also in the FAQ that was, it was touched on in the FAQ. But what we envision with the way the facility would be set up, if it is voted on to be approved, the public entrance and the main police entrance would be off of Pine Bar. We don't have that many visitors a day. How many, Chief Miles, as far as to the police department? A couple a day at most. Yeah, and on the north side of the facility would be where the fire trucks go out to Rebay Avenue to access Carolina. They would most likely come in from Pine Bar to go back to the station, but as far as responding, it would be off of Rebay to Carolina. And I honestly don't see a need to even turn the sirens on Rebay Avenue itself. It would be once you got to Carolina Street, and then it'd be necessary then, of course, to activate the sirens. So most of the people on Pine Bar and maybe even to some degree the little section of Laurel shouldn't be too terribly affected by it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. With all of us that lived there, that was it's an older road, but it was my grandfather's house, and I bought the house next to it. And there's a lot of younger people coming in with kids, and just I was looking at the effects of the sounds and everything. I mean, it's great. I love what you guys do. I respect everything that police and fire do. Thank you, guys. I just had some concerns about that as a family member.
Those were good questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, we'll conclude the workshop for tonight. I thank each of you for attending. I appreciate your questions. If you, whoa, wait a minute, whoa, not yet. Let me finish real quick. David has an announcement he wants to make, but I want to tell you this, that I appreciate and council appreciates all of you coming out, whether you're for or against or in the middle. You came out and you voiced your opinion and you participated in your government. And for years, I went to council meetings and the only people there were department heads, okay? And this is good to see that our citizens are that interested in their government. David?
Yes, if you'd stick around, we're just going to have citizens gather, and we can talk amongst ourselves. I believe these guys need to get more public support than they're getting. And so let's talk what we can do to support what the big plan is. So